Hello and welcome to Staying the Course, a podcast on navigating the challenges of lifelong learning. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe if you find this helpful. Our guest for today is Hazim Mohamad, the co-founder of Counselab, a platform for one-to-one platform for advising sessions. Hi Hazim, how are you?
Hi, sir. Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right, man. Thanks for making time for this conversation.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
And congratulations to Counselab on its app launch day.
Thank you. Yeah, that is quite a coincidence, I know.
So in this episode, I'll be speaking to Hazim about his rationale and aspiration in co-founding Counselab. We are keen to know his vision in building the platform which is for people to get advice in their respective endeavors for both educational and professional needs. We'll also be speaking about his own learning journey from his time in Malaysia to the UK and to his time in the US. A bit of a background, Hazim is a Chartered Financial Analyst with a master's in finance from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT, and he holds a bachelor's degree in accounting and finance from the University of Warwick. So Hazim, my first question is quite simple. Tell us about yourself.
All right. So I'm Hazim. I'm from Ipoh, Malaysia. Went to boarding school when I was 12. I did A-levels. So my boarding school was College Science in Malacca. Went to boarding school, middle of the jungle, right? So this was a time where there wasn't really, internet. So there was one computer lab, 30 computers for 300 people. And phones were banned. So it was an interesting time then. Learned a lot, that was where I really grew as a person. I feel of all the periods of my life, the 5 years in boarding school were probably the most important of all. Did A-levels KYUM, accounting and finance in Warwick, MIT, World Bank, and now Counselab. So it's we can go into the details later, but as a short summary, that's the life journey I've had.
Right, great. So, the reason I call you in because I think Counselab, although the premise is in counseling, it is also a form of learning as well. If we look into the organizational learning model of 70% on the job, 20% through coaching, and 10% through formal classroom teaching, I think this comes within the 70 to 20%, which makes a large chunk of learning in an organizational perspective. But a bit about yourself, MIT is a dream school for many. I've only seen it in Good Will Hunting. How was your experience?
Good movie.
How was your experience getting into MIT and doing your master's in finance there?
Yep. So I guess it's a process. It's not something, even though I thought about applying very last minute, 4 weeks before the deadline of the master's program. I mean, you can say your whole life, but especially the 3 to 5 years leading up to the application is what matters the most to the school. And just my time in Warwick in the UK, let me tell you. So in my first year, I was doing a lot of Malaysian things, like Malaysian Student Association, UKEC, the National Umbrella Student Organization in the UK. Malaysian night, I was the lead actor. I was singing, acting, dancing on stage. But these are things, I sort of did anyway in KYS during my boarding school years. So that wasn't really anything new then. I mean, I enjoyed it. I made a lot of friends, really, really wonderful experiences. But at the end of my first year, I'm like, I need to sort of get out of the bubble, but not necessarily just separating myself. That's where the idea of ASEAN came into the picture, right? Because Malaysia is part of ASEAN, but it's just 1 out of 10. So rather than just me separating myself, I said, what if, I pull some of these people who have been close to during first year of university to the ASEAN concept. And second year, I mean, really, right? It's the story of how the accident of how I started Warwick ASEAN Conference, that is the exact story I shared to MIT, to the World Bank. And yeah, it's just a unique story. So I'm not sure if you've heard of it before, but I mean, short summary, I was at a dinner in London. There were 70 Malaysian students with Tony Fernandez. A new student organization was going to be born that night. After dinner, everyone took pictures with him. But yeah, my friend from Warwick, who became president of Warwick after he lived in the same hall as I did in Warwick. So Hazim, remember our coffee chat, our kitchen table chat 2-3 months ago? Why don't you just pitch it to Tony now? And it was an idea for just an ASEAN conference of sorts, but it was very vague, right? There was no proposal, no team. But yeah, he said, if you don't pitch now, you're not going to have this chance again. I'm like, yeah, of course, you're right. So two of us walked up to Tony. Of course, my friend pushed me one step further, so I'll be the one talking. I'm like, Tony, can I have a minute of your time? I have an idea to share. I said, yeah, go ahead. And I said, I attended your talk in LSC last year entitled Is ASEAN Still Relevant? Building on points of your talk, yeah, I want to start the first ever Warwick ASEAN Conference. And I I sort of put him in a corner, right? He couldn't say he wasn't interested. He gave a 2-hour talk on the topic. And yeah, so it's like, I like the sound of the idea, but just answer me this one question, right? Is this going to be a Malaysian ASEAN thing or an ASEAN thing? And as simple as that question sounds, most of the time it's very difficult, right? In the region, if it's done in Malaysia, Vietnam, Brunei, mostly people organizing it or people attending will be just the nature of how, it's a very spread out region. But yeah, I knew I needed a quick answer. I told him, for you, Tony, I'm going to make it an ASEAN thing. Yeah. And that was it, 30, 45 seconds of shameless, plug, trying, not knowing what was going to happen. But yeah, he put out his hand, said, yeah, I don't know if you really have a plan, but I like your spirit. I like the sound of the idea. Let me be your keynote speaker. And yeah, I will fund you guys. And that was it. So that story, right, it's the same-ish. That's the one I wrote for MIT. Of course, they were also asking about Petronas. I was a Petronas scholar at the time. So between Petronas, Warwick ASEAN Conference, and yeah, of course, academics is still very important, right? So some of my favorite subjects in university, those were the 3 things that MIT asked when they came. 2 of them came to London to interview me. So the process is just applying online, then, doing the interview, and yeah, you get the offer. But the first step is always to make, to actually apply, right? But you think when it's a 3-5% chance of, acceptance rate, it's just very low. But I remember this conversation with my dad, like, yeah, it's low, but yeah, it's the same for everyone-ish, right? And if you don't apply, you're not going to get the offer. Can you live with not knowing what it could be? So even if it wasn't going to work out, by all probabilities, 95% chance of not working out. But yeah, you just got to take a chance sometimes. And that's what I did with MIT.
I see. That's a great story that has some really interesting beginnings going back a few years, yeah. And and I think the great thing about it is the boldness in expanding the scope of your conference. I think the question is it a Malaysian ASEAN thing or an ASEAN thing? It really pushes the boundaries of thinking, and I think you really met up to the challenge there. So you were in MIT, Boston, and then you went to work after that. Before, early in 2021, you became a co-founder and CEO of Counselab. It's an interesting concept, Hazim. It happens in real life outside of the virtual world. It happens by chance. It happens by fate. But what is the thinking behind the idea that founded Counselab?
Sure. So of course, there's always stories. So there's a couple more here, I guess. So when it comes to Counselab, it goes back right to March, April 2018. So it's this boy, right? I mean, at the time, he was just 17 years old. After SPM, Kartik Nagarajan, he is now one of the founding team members of Counselab. And yeah, he coded up basically Android himself from scratch. And he's only 21 now, just after university last month. But when he was 17 and he reached out to me, he went to KYS as well. But yeah, 7 years apart. I was 24. I just started working with the World Bank. And yeah, here it is, here there is a 17-year-old after SPM reaching out. And it was like, Hazim, I didn't get the scholarships, that I wanted to. Yeah, I applied to a few, got, to stage 3, stage 4, but he only applied for really PPE. And not many sponsoring bodies offer it, right? So he was sort of in a dilemma. He didn't know what to do because he was really, really hoping it would be one of this. So he's like, can you please guide me for my post-secondary school life? And for a 17-year-old to do that, from Malaysia, from Asia, this is not common. 17-year-old me did not do that, right? I should have, but yeah, I didn't have the guts. So clearly, Kartik had guts. So I told him, yeah, instead of me responding here, why not we have a 30-minute call, right? And yeah, the 30-minute call became 3 hours because this was a very crucial junction of his life, right? After SPM, deciding what you want to do with life is a big part. I mean, scholarship is one, but really what course you want to do, how do you find yourself? Because most of the time at that age, your exposure is really just to your parents' friends, and your friends' parents or something like that. So it's not easy for you to make the decision to do some courses which are just not within your immediate sphere, right? So that 3-hour call was important. And he was sort of an experiment. So I told him, we figured out what he should probably do. He enrolled in A-levels college. It was a gamble. But the things that he did during A-levels was just exceptional. I mean, I can give 1 or 2 examples. So one, because he was 50-50 between PPE, because he was he was a debater, and computer science, because it's very difficult to decide on computer science when you don't have exposure in high school, even much in A-levels, right? How do you decide to do a degree in computer science without exposure? So between his first and second year of A-levels, AS and A2, I asked him, why don't you just try some of these Harvard's first year computer science lectures, right? Just 1-2 hours. If you don't like it, then stop. Yeah, he finished almost half of the course within that 3-4 weeks of, So cool. He didn't do all the assignments, but just listening to the lectures alone, being interested enough, because if you don't understand it, you're not going to you're not going to watch through half of the courses, but he did. So that was one thing. And he heard a story that I just shared about Warwick Azan Conference just now. He read Tony's book, Flying High, the autobiography. He wrote a physical letter addressing Tony. Tony can really relate to your experience going to boarding school at 13 and all. He shared also his resume because, by then he already did some computer science courses, and just said, if there's any way we could meet or, any way I could contribute to the Asia, let me know. Yeah, within a week, the head of HR offered him a data analytics role. And this is a 18-year-old boy. And again, right, this was just exceptional. So every 2-3 months, we'll have a 20-minute call each. Clearly, I told him, I'm not doing computer science or PPE, but I have friends who clearly are, so one of my friends at least can guide you in whatever you want to do. And that's at the core of Counselab, because not everyone may necessarily have the network, but there are people out there who are more than willing to do it. And whoever I introduced Kartik to, they always said yes to talk to him. If it's just a 20-minute call, they always did it. So that's one part of it. But the second part of this founding of Counselab is just me doing 3 to 5 calls with strangers, really. Initially, it was friends of friends. But once you start working, a lot of people start reaching out to you, to me on LinkedIn. And over time, doing 5 of these calls every weekend, right, with just whoever, over time, it got a lot. And clearly, when they reach out to me, I'm like, I can do the calls, but when the volume was too much, or clearly I knew someone better to address that topic than me, I will always make introductions. And 4 years, from my starting of work, it's almost been 4 years at World Bank. I've done hundreds of these calls. There's demand everywhere. And there's people who are willing to do it. It's just a matter of coming up with a platform that is tailored to this. Because the problem of LinkedIn is that it's a 3-layered problem. First, you don't necessarily have the right people in your network. You don't just search someone up on LinkedIn. You could search someone up, try to add them and talk to them, but it's a lot of barrier because you don't know if they're open to doing it, which is the second layer, right? Even if you know the person, you don't know if they're open to talking to you. And if they're open, you don't know if they're free talking to you. That is why the funnel usually is you reach out to 10 people to get to 2 people who are, open to talking to you, to 1 who is actually free. And I experienced this. All my friends in MIT, when we were applying for jobs, we wanted guidance to apply to all these companies and whatnot. Right. It was very difficult. And if you have to reach out to 200, 300 people to talk to like 10, 20, and it's not optimal. And that is why Counselab is built as a one-to-one, to optimize one-to-one advising sessions. You have a profile, You put the topics you want to give guidance on, or what you want to see, right? So that we can start with the recommendation algorithm underneath. I mean, recommending people to you. You have the messaging function, scheduling to know when you're free and all. So it's just clean. And I've asked enough people, because LinkedIn is very corporate, is very professional, but that also means 18-year-olds out there, doctors, medical doctors, scientists, creators, don't really feel like, LinkedIn is for them, because LinkedIn does very well at what it was built to do, which is jobs, right? People applying for jobs and recruiters finding people. But for advising, it was never really tailored for that. It's very hard for it to move from the image it has built of being a very, very professional, platform. All right.
Wow.
Let me pause that.
Okay. All right. So, the reason I founded this podcast is because I've been receiving questions across many platforms.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So and recently, I think Counselab were looking for people who can advise with regards to application to graduate school.
Yeah.
I think those were some of the test runs, or some of the demography that you would like to test first. So today, 12 hours ago, was the launch of the app, both on the Apple Store as well as the Play Store. But in the past few months, when you were doing this runs,
testing it out,
how has the reception been? How has the test runs been for?
Yeah. So we started with the first run of about 150 people. Really, it was just a spreadsheet, right? We were using Airtable, exactly trying to replicate at most, most of what we have in the app now, but just in a spreadsheet. People giving details that will allow us to start, matching people, for people to start having calls. So the first 150 people, really, I mean, we were just open, right? We didn't really focus on any topic. We wanted to see what were the ranges of topics people would want advice on. We had some assumptions, but we wanted to validate it. And almost overwhelmingly, everyone wanted some form of academic or career advice. And there were some others, like financial and all, but that's a little trickier, because those require verifications of backgrounds. I'll get to the details later. But the 150 people, the bulk of it was like A-level students, demand side, applying to university on the supply side. And there were multiple tests, right? When I saw the demands of this 50 odd, A-level students wanting to apply to UK mainly, or US, then I started reaching out to people from these universities, these people wanted to apply for, the A-level students wanted to apply for. And amazingly, the range of people, one is a senior I haven't spoken to in like 11 years, from KYS. Another was the primary school friend who I haven't spoken to, but they are on LinkedIn. I just needed to verify they're sort of active on LinkedIn, right? Just seeing when was the last activity they've had to know that, they're on the platform. Otherwise, you're going to do the same funnel, right? You reach out to 10 to get to one. So, I did not want to go through that route. So I saw immediately, and the uptake, people responded within 1-2 days. If you feel like I'm good, because what you do when you make an introduction is that you're telling the advisor you're good enough to talk to the student, and the student is probably worth your time, in terms of a fit to have a meaningful, beneficial, productive conversation. And throughout, the 100-ish calls which happened between this 100 people, 98 were happy, were good. And the other 2 were neutral. And just because, and I get it, from the advisor's side, you don't really know necessarily if you gave good advice, right? It is up to the advisee, because even if you shared what happened in your life, you may or may not apply to other person, but that's where, the profile building of Counselab matters. And we're making it a little more personal, right? Sharing about turning points in your life, what makes you tick, what are your goals in life and all. These are not really, it's too personal to be put on LinkedIn. But clearly people were happy with it. And that is why also when it comes to the business model of Counselab, we are giving the option to the advisee who got the advice to decide whether or not they got value and tip the person in a coffee token. That's what we're going to test over the next 5-7 days. Like a $5 token, right? If you're happy with it, you could, but it's completely optional. Because my financial models were simple. When I was raising pre-seed funding, I just needed about 5-10% of calls, all calls which happen to have any form of tipping. Yeah? So out of 20 calls, if one call ends up in a $5 tip, this platform runs. Because the other thing, very important thing we learned during the test was that, yeah, people didn't really mind that the calls didn't happen on Counselab's platform, you know, the video audio calls, because what they needed was the connection. So what we did in the feature that we thought of based on that, you know, insight from the test was that, yeah, what if we just, as people create their profiles, you know, they can just put their Zoom link or Google Meet link, and, you know, on your Counselab calendar, you just click on it and yeah, you go to the call, right? Because the server cost of a 30-minute audio call, yeah, of course, it's not, I mean, it's free for us users, of course, now, but no, there's some server somewhere in the world running it. Right. And the rough estimation of the cost was about 24 cents per 30-minute call. And we have 1 million calls, that's $240,000. And that is a lot of money. But when the calls don't even need to happen on Counselab, of course, over time, once we get bigger and our scale, we'll probably have that feature to make life easier for our users. But you need to know, as you're building a company, an app, what are the most important features to build first? Because there's a million things you want to build. But yeah, you got to triage, right? You really got to decide in the beginning, what is the core of the app? And that's where we found through the test is profile building, it's messaging, scheduling, and, you know, recommendations. And that is what we have in the first version that we launched yesterday.
And I was just looking at the screenshots, pages or wireframes of the app. Seems quite friendly and easy to use to me.
It's deliberate, yes.
Yeah. So, what's the thinking behind the
I mean, the designing, of course. I would rather my co-founder Karega answer, because yeah, she's the one who thought through most of the designing. But the branding we thought about a year ago, right? So even as we started Counselab, you come up with a brand brief of what attributes you want your brand to really like, because yeah, you have to focus, right? Because if you're really too professional, then yeah, just by default, it won't be as friendly. So what we have is somewhere in between LinkedIn and, like, for lack of better examples, that, you know, almost like dating apps. Because dating apps are very very personal. Yeah. LinkedIn is very professional. So we wanted somewhere in between, because you need the element of personality, vulnerability to make an advising platform work. If it's too professional, people are not gonna, you know, be comfortable necessarily to write these things. But if it's too casual, like dating platforms, then yeah, people will just think, you know, this is not really built for professional, you know, academic advising. Yeah. So it's somewhere in between. So we built, you know, a 10-page-ish brand brief across multiple things, which persona represents as who our target market, what, you know, so that is how we came up with the current design. So it's deliberate personalities, you know, about friendliness, you know, vulnerability, reliability, openness, exploration, you know, discovery. These are things. That's why you see an astronaut-ish on one of the pages on our website. Yeah, because, you know, space is like the ultimate example of exploration, right? So it's almost like you're in your own spaceship in Counselab, you're trying to figure out these different paths of your life, especially at the crucial junctions, you know, 2-3 calls. That is what has helped me throughout these different junctions in life. And most of these people I don't really even know, right? They are just people I reached out to via cold messages on LinkedIn, especially when it came to MIT World Bank. Yeah, I didn't know anyone in these 2 places personally. So I really just had to reach out to strangers at the time. But any shared background helps. So, and that's another thing where, yeah, you know, as you try to sign up a Counselab, we're asking, you know, which country are you from, that you identify with, you know, countries which matter the most to you, where you studied, where you've worked, countries of origin, countries of affiliation, rather, languages you speak. Because yeah, while the app is in English, some people may just be comfortable speaking in different languages, right? We haven't really translated the app. That comes later, as you know, we grow into more targeted regions. But at the moment, we're just opening it up to see, yeah, where the demand is. We sort of know from the tests and all, but we're allowing people to sign up and put whatever topics they want to advise on. We have a list of like 20 suggested prompts, you know, for topics you want to get or give advice on. But yeah, people could really put whatever they want. And the list of interest that you see, as long as it's non-qualified, that is the most important part here. We are only, I mean, it's in the terms and conditions, we only allow non-qualified advice to be given on the app now. If it's not, then, you know, it's, because when it comes to financial, medical, legal advice, for example, we will need to verify this. And this comes later when we sort of launch something like Counselab Pro. Because if you want 1 million users in 6 months or a year, it's going to be very hard to verify each person's background. So what we'll do instead for credibility checks is the tipping mechanism. Because if it's tip, right, clearly this advisee got value, ratings, feedback, or flagging, right? If there are bad actors, and there will be bad actors as any platform, there'll be flags by the community. So it's a community-driven-ish verification check at this point. So,
Another element about Counselab that has intrigued me is the team that you have assembled. And I think over the past week and a half, the Counselab page on LinkedIn has been sharing who's the people behind the organization. The graphic designer, your marketing strategies, the UI, UX person, and these are very, very highly qualified people. What was the thinking in you assembling this team and bringing these great people together to be force behind Counselab?
Yeah. So initially, really, I've been thinking about this concept for years, but Kartik was what really brought it to the forefront of my mind. Like maybe I want to do something, and how I found my co-founder, really, Korean Gan, right? She was with Facebook at the time. So at the 2-year mark of Kartik sending me that message on Facebook, I wrote an article on Facebook, LinkedIn called, turning a fishing rod into a fishing boat. And there's a play on the fishing rod quote because this guy really brought it all the way. Because I wrote the article, Corinne found it. I mean, she read the article. We only met once in 2018 at some random event in the US. It's like a business case study competition. I was judging. She was a participant. But we barely spoke. But she read the article, saw that Kartik was taking a gap year. And she volunteered, to help Kartik, to guide Kartik over his gap year because he wanted to self-learn computer science. And it was COVID, right? A lot of people were taking gap years because, not being in university is not great. So when you're a university student. But so that's how I found the X factor in Corinne, right? Because, I mean, there are people, of course, with more experience and all, but I needed someone devoted to the cause. And her reaching out directly to Kartik, even though she even barely knew me, right, was a very, very strong indicator. I had a call with her and, within a couple of days, she agreed to be a co-founder. But the others initially was like friends, right? I really just needed someone to help with designs that in the beginning, to start with the logo, the initial color scheme and whatnot, the brand brief. So that's how I asked Husna, who was my friend from, a prior endeavor in the UK. She was doing a PhD in tourism management at the time in Surrey. She's in Japan now. She's the one in Japan. But so the others are like friends of friends or like affiliations. So the 3-4 people you see, Americans in our team from UPenn, specifically, because that was the school Corinne went to. They have a student club called Penn Spark. And the student club matches students who want, students who want startup experience with startups who want, to give the opportunity to students. And that's how we got this 3-4 amazing people. They're currently students. So a lot of people, apart from Corinne and I, everyone else is doing it part-time at the moment. So, but as you said, they have amazing backgrounds. And as and when, they graduate, they're ready to join Counselab full-time-ish. But as you build a startup, you have to bootstrap. So we know we cannot afford, 5, 10, because to validate the concept, so you do pre-seed to validate-ish the idea enough to raise a seed round. So once you raise a seed round, and we are hoping to do that, within the next 2 to 6 months, that is when you hire 4 or 5 full-timers once you have validated the demand. So as launching the app, there are 4 layers of demand, I guess. So downloading the app, creating the profile, engaging people, having the call, then having a tip call, right? Because a tip call is the ultimate indicator of demand that, people value this enough. People value the time, the call that they've had enough to want to, because it's very hard for people to spend money, but that is an indicator of interest. But so in terms of the team, it's a mixture of affiliations and friends or friends of friends at this time. But as we do seed, we will need to hire full-timers who have more experience because that is when you try to scale it up.
So you mentioned the potential of a Counselab Pro one day. You just mentioned scaling it up. Counselab is about 11 months old. The app is live, 12 hours old. What is your long-term vision and aspiration for Counselab?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the vision is simple. The vision is just a world where everyone, everywhere has access to the guidance they need. And as simple as that sounds, of course, it's a very, very difficult vision to achieve, right? And we know, but yeah, we got to start somewhere. So we're starting with the academic career circle, and that's already huge. Our go-to-market strategy is to go to universities. But for example, alumni really want to help like current students, but most of the current grad platforms, right, like Warwick's one and all, isn't really optimized yet. It's difficult. When it's not a social media, people just won't open it as much. So ours really is a combination of a social media with a marketplace. You can almost think of it like LinkedIn plus Reddit combined together. And yeah, unless you're opening it every day, it's going to be very difficult for you to just respond on, UCL net, Cambridge net, or whatever, Warwick net. And the go-to-market strategy is this. What if, when we test with the first community, because we haven't built the community feature, we'll need to build it first to do this. But then alums will be able to talk to current students. And yeah, the current students' tipping the person goes into an alumni fund. So then, these alumni really giving advice is directly benefiting the endowment for their schools. And your relationship, your people's, relationship with the school is very strong, right? It's just an identity that you really hold forever. And yeah, I mean, between giving the tip to the person or to the school's endowment or to charity, between these three, of the 100 people with us, 95% we'll definitely be comfortable with one of these three. Because some people don't want the money for themselves, and that's fine. You can give it to your school, or you give it to the best charities in the world, which are data backed and all, right? Those are the ones who will likely choose for that. But yeah, so that is the idea, the go-to-market strategy. Because if you get one university, you're going to get 10, 100, 1,000 universities, right? And each university, between alumni and current students, you're talking about 10,000 people-ish per university. So 100 universities gets us to 1 million. But we haven't really built the communities feature yet. We tested it out a bit in the first version of the app. This is really like the second full version of the app. So that we were comfortable enough. Because the first one was really just to see, right, if we allow, as simple as basic as possible profile, a lot of profiles are just empty. Because it's like Clubhouse, right? When you allow an empty feel alone, a lot of profiles are empty, and that's very hard to kickstart conversations. That is why you will see our sign-up process has a few more steps, instead of 30 seconds, it may take, 1-2 minutes. But yeah, it's important to set the baseline right. So even at the very base of profiles that you see on Counselab, 100-ish people have signed up over the past, 12 hours. Yeah, even the most basic of profiles has enough information-ish to start a conversation. So yeah. But that is the vision, right? To anyone, anywhere, getting guidance they need on almost any topic.
Yeah, and it begins with a single conversation. I think that's a powerful.
It all starts with a single conversation. It does.
I think that's a powerful line. So kudos to the team. So Hazim, my final question. You've began movements even from your student days. Being very active in organizations, student societies. You've been in corporate, and now you are in the startup scene as a co-founder. What would be your advice for those who are toying with the idea, dreaming the dream, and just itching for that first step forward into founding a movement or startup?
Sure. So I guess it depends on the stage of life. There's a slight separation in terms of how I've done it since starting work and how I've done it, from like high school, university. So let me separate answer in that, I guess. So when it came to A-levels college, I started KYUM Summit. It was just really, I tested it out, right? And I think that applies to both. So testing it out, just thinking it through, right? Talking about, just write it down really. A 1-pager, 3, 5, 10 bullet points. Try to talk it through with some friends to see if it makes sense, right? Because talking to even 5-10 people. You're going to have 10, different minds as additional information. But the first time you do it, you can do the Google searches and all, but that doesn't get you to the details as much, because you sort of have to optimize it, like advice, right, to your background. And it comes to these projects, to the locality, the community you're trying to build it for. So there is an element of optimization that happens. But the first step, you can use online resources to do most research. So like Warwick Hazim Conference, it was, I already had the kitchen table discussion with the friend before I pitched it to Tony. Right? It wasn't really okay. There wasn't a real plan, but I sort of tried to see if it made any sense by having, like a reality check with some friends a few months before that. So building Counselab is the same. It's some people, yes, they just quit the jobs, then try it out. But no, I don't really like that mechanism. I like to test it out to see if it makes sense. And that is why it's been, almost 12 months, right, from the initial conversation I had with Corinne and Kartik before actually the decision. Okay, it was about 7-8 months, because to deciding that, yes, I'm ready-ish to quit the job and, transition, as long as, the visa works out. So, but so it's about testing it out, finding a co-founder. So everything I've built, I've had at least one co-founder. Some people can go solo, but when you have an accountability buddy, and most of these things, when you start something, it's never really easy, even as simple as a project in school. So having even one other person to work it out with you has been, at least for me, what has made it work. Every single thing, from KYOM Summit in A-Levels College, Warwick Hazim Conference in the UK, to Counselab, because I've thought about it for years, but it's really when you have another person to push you, right? You push each other, you support each other. It's a difficult journey. So testing it out, getting a co-founder is what I would recommend to people before really. But because testing the opportunity cost is lower. If you quit your job before knowing it'll work, that's I wouldn't, because I'm a risk manager. That's what I do in World Bank, right? I'm a risk analyst. So I need to analyze the risk before making, and because it's very easy to see all these stories of people just quitting university and all, but that's one story out of, maybe 1,000, 10,000, which didn't work, right? So you gotta be smart. It has to be calculated risk, and there are ways to test it out which are low risk, as talking it through, designing a simple proposal or project 1-2 pager template, and talking to people, getting a co-founder. Because if you get a co-founder, there's already a validation that there's some value to it. So, because getting a co-founder already means that there's at least one other person who believes in it as much, if not more, than you, and that goes a long way.
Right. So, I think those inspirational words will go a long way, especially for the young ones who were at the junctures that you were at previously. So with that, Hazim, thank you again for your time. My prayers and well wishes for Counselab. I think it's a noble initiative all in all, because it creates access to those, and it opens doors to opportunities to those who might not have the grit or resilience, the natural one, which needs to be built over time. With that, I wish you the very best, Hazim. Looking forward to follow the progress and development of Counselab.
Thank you very much, Ezra.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.